Hello everyone and welcome to this lecture in the hands-on large language models series. Today we are going to study about a very important topic, and that is related to prompt engineering. So first of all, what is prompt engineering? It's the art of giving effective prompts to ChatGPT so that you can get the responses which you want. Not just ChatGPT, to any large language model which we can think of. So, for example, here if I write create a lesson plan on Egyptian civilization, and when I press enter, this is the prompt which I've given to ChatGPT, and here you can see the response which ChatGPT is giving me in real time. So, prompt is the window between where you currently are and amazing responses which you can get from large language models or ChatGPT. It's very important for you to understand that very similar to Google search, right? The better we search, the better results we'll get. Similarly, in prompt engineering, the better prompts you have, the higher quality prompts you have, the results will be much better and according to your expectations. Now, this field of prompt engineering is not as simple and straightforward as it looks. There are a huge number of techniques and skills which you can acquire so that you can write prompts in a very effective manner. I am not going to make this lecture into a 4-hour masterclass to show you uh, things about prompt engineering which are obvious, but I will start from introductions and I will show you only those techniques which can be really useful to you in your day-to-day life. Some of these techniques I was using it, but I had not bucketed them into, oh, I'm actually doing this or I'm actually doing that. But now I think I have seen enough patterns that I'm ready to make and deliver this lecture. To come up with the lecture itself and to come up with the lesson notes, I followed this book, Hands on Large Language Models, which is an amazing book written by J. Alamar and Martin Grutendorf. So I highly recommend you to go through this GitHub repository, which is now open source and it has 2.4k stars. The code which we will be seeing today is from this GitHub repository itself. In fact, let me go to the Google Colab interface right now where we are going to see the code. And I'll keep it ready over here so that all of you can follow with me as we work on the code sequentially. So let's get started with today's lecture. It will be a mix of theory plus hands-on practical aspects. Okay, what will be the objective of this lecture, or what will be the goals of this lecture? There are essentially three main objectives or three main goals of this lecture. First is to teach you how to design effective prompts. The second is how do you know whether the response which is generated is good or not? Qualitatively, you can look at the response and say that, okay, this is what I wanted. But is there any formal way to evaluate the output of the model? Whenever I'm going to say model in this lecture, I mean large language model. So you can think of ChatGPT. This is OpenAI GPT 3.5 or GPT 4 model. I mean large language model. And then third, how to design safeguards and safety mitigation methods. That's also very important. How to design effective safeguards and safety mitigation methods so that the responses which you are getting are safe, they are ethically accurate, and they are morally sound. So, prompt engineering is not just writing something and getting a response, it's about all of these three things which I just described right now: the art of designing effective prompts, evaluating model output, and designing safeguards and safety mitigation methods. So, let's start with the complete basics. What are the basic ingredients of a prompt? Initially, you might think that the basic prompt is just you give some sentence, it's incomplete, and you ask the model to complete the sentence. So let's say the input is the sky is, you pass it to the large language model and then you expect some sort of an output. We can actually test this here right now. So I'm just going to type the skies, and you will see that ChatGPT completes this output, a vast expanse of mystery stretching endlessly above us. Now, do you think this is a good prompt? This is definitely not a good prompt because there is no specific task which is accomplished here. It's completely vague. So, this is a very, very basic example of a prompt. No instruction is given here. So, the LLM will simply try to complete the sentence in whatever way it can. It is not following any guidelines, it is not following any instructions. So, this is a very vague prompt. The two main components of a prompt are that it should have an instruction, and secondly it should have data which relates with that instruction. So for example, let's look at this prompt. Classify the text into negative or positive. That is the instruction, and the data which we are giving is this is a great movie. And then the generated text is the text is positive. That's the output. So let's test this out. I'm going to start with a new interface here, and I'm going to say classify the text into negative or positive. This is the instruction, and the text is this is a great movie. This is the data. So now I've given instruction and I have given data. So I've asked a very specific task. So you see now the answer is the text. This is a great movie is positive. This is exactly what I wanted. This is an example of a good prompt. You ask a very specific question and then you get an answer which is following what you asked. So that's why this is a good prompt which has two components. It has an instruction and it also has data which relates with that instruction. Now what you can also do is that, let's say uh, if we don't want this complete sentence like the text this is a great movie is positive, but we only want the output to be either positive or negative, just one word. So what we can do is we can add output indicators to guide the model. So now let me try this, classify the text into positive or negative. But here I'm going to say um, the text. So I'm going to add indicators. So I'm going to say text, and then I'm going to add another indicator which is sentiment. So as has been written here, the data is still this is a great movie. That's so I still have instruction, I still have a data, but I now have added output indicators. So text is a label, and then sentiment is a label. So I hope that after I provide this, it prevents the model from generating the complete sentence. So I'm going to click on enter right now, and here you see it just provided one word which is positive. This is exactly what I expected. So this is a simple demonstration of how adding small things in the prompt can lead you to different outputs. So if you learn the art of prompt engineering, you can really take the response to where you want it to go. Okay, so until now we have seen how to generate a basic prompt, the two ingredients of a good prompt, and how to add output indicators to guide the model. So we can continue adding or updating the elements of a prompt till we get the answers which we are looking for. We could add additional examples, describe the use case in more detail, and provide additional context, etc. So there are a huge number of ways to take the basic prompt which we have seen right now and make it into more complex and advanced, which is all what we are going to explore in today's lecture. And what I want you to do now is that when you think of prompts, you may have something in mind. You may think that this is just a question which I have to ask, but that is not a good way to think about it. You can think of prompt as piece of a larger puzzle, which means that imagine the puzzle as you're assembling pieces and you're completing the puzzle, which is related to you getting the correct output or correct answer which you want. A prompt is, you can think of prompt as pieces of this puzzle, and when the prompt has multiple pieces which fit together, it leads to a good output or a good answer. So for example, when you have written something quick, ask yourself the question, are the pieces of my puzzle really complete? which means is my prompt really complete? Have I described the context of my question? Does the prompt have an example of the output? So does the prompt have an example of what you want the output to be? It does not have right now. But I could have easily given an example here saying that if this were the movie, this is the output, this is the output which I want. This is the output sentiment which I want. So there are several things which you can do to complete this puzzle. If you start thinking of a prompt as assembling puzzle pieces together, you will not stop by giving something quick or by giving something basic. You will always try to go that extra step by asking these questions that have I tried to make the prompt as detailed as possible. And in the next sections, I'm going to tell you what does it mean making the prompt detailed, or what does it mean to complete the pieces of this puzzle. So let's look at instruction based prompting in detail. This is the most common type of prompting which a huge number of students, researchers, industry professionals, and anyone who uses large language models or ChatGPT use. At the simplest explanation of instruction based prompting is that you give an instruction and you want the ChatGPT or the LLM to complete or to follow that instruction. So, prompting is often used to have the LLM answer a specific question or resolve a certain task. This is referred to as instruction based prompting. What are some examples of instruction based prompting? If you want the large language model or ChatGPT to generate code, you will give it some incomplete code and ask it to complete the code. You will instruct it to complete the code. That's an example of instruction based prompting. If you give it a huge article and if you want it to summarize the article, that's an example of instruction based prompting because you are giving an instruction to ChatGPT that I want you to summarize this article. If you have a bunch of different news articles and if you want to classify the news articles into, let's say, about politics, is it about cars, is it about music, is it about religion, that's an example of instruction based prompting because you are giving an instruction to ChatGPT that hey, I want you to look at these news articles and classify them into which bucket they belong to. And another simple thing is just searching. So if you want to search, tell me the capital of Argentina or tell me the capital of India, that's an instruction which you are giving, but it's disguised in the form of a search. Named entity recognition, which means that if you have a huge piece of text and if you want to find where all proper nouns come in that text or give me places where a name of a person is described in this text, that's an example of named entity recognition. Again, all of these are examples of instruction based prompting where you give an instruction to ChatGPT or the LLM and you expect it to follow your instruction. All right. So now here you will see that although there is a underlying pattern or underlying theme between all of these tasks, the underlying theme is that they are tasks which require an instruction and the LLM completes or follows that instruction. That's the underlying commonness or pattern between all of these tasks. But we don't have to use the same prompting format for all of these. Each of these tasks require different prompting formats. So someone who doesn't know about prompt engineering or who takes this very lightly, they will use the same prompt for all of these tasks. But someone who has learned the art of prompt engineering will know that different types of prompts need to be used for these tasks. So for example, here I am showing an image of the types of prompts which can be used. So for a summarization task, we can have a simple instruction such as summarize the text and give the data. For classification, we can use output indicators. So is the following text neutral, negative or positive? Give the text and then ask it to output the sentiment, such as what we did here right now. For the case of named entity recognition, we can define the entities such as a person or a location, and we can say that verbs and adjectives are not entities. And then we can ask the instruction that extract entities from the following text. So we can define entities, we can define something called as an exclusion criteria, and then we can give the instruction after these two are defined. So you see there are some differences between the way prompts are structured in the case of text summarization, in the case of text classification, and in the case of named entity recognition. That's very important to note. Okay, so the first set of tools which I am going to give you in this lecture is some special techniques which you can use to get better responses from the LLM or ChatGPT itself. You might be following some of these techniques, but if not, try to keep these three techniques in mind. The first is specificity, third, second is reducing hallucination, and third is maintaining a specific order. So let me go through each of these. Specificity is very, very accurately describing what you want to achieve. And it sounds easy, but many people whom I have met do not follow this. So if you want to write a description if you want the chat GPT or the LLM to write a description for the product, you can either say write a description for a product, or you can say write a description for a product in less than 2 sentences and use a formal tone. Do you see the difference between the right prompt and the left prompt? The left prompt here is not the correct way because it's not specific. Whereas as you go to the right, this prompt over here, which I'm highlighting with a circle right now, is very, very specific. Here you are asking the LLM or ChatGPT to write a description in less than 2 sentences and also to use a formal tone. You are giving very specific instructions over here. So that's the first technique. Always be very specific when you interact with ChatGPT. Second, you may have observed that many a times ChatGPT confidently generates information which is completely incorrect, right? This is referred to as hallucination. There are some things which we can do to reduce its impact. It's a very simple trick, but after giving the prompt, you can ask the LLM to only generate an answer if it knows the answer. If it does not know the answer, ask it to respond with I don't know. This sounds very simple, right? But the moment you add it to your prompt, the amount of hallucinations really reduce a lot. So if you are working in a field where you really care about the accuracy of responses, always add this sentence at the end of your prompt so that you get accurate responses. The third is order. This is something which I did not know until I read this book, Hands on Large Language Models. But what is written in this book essentially is that if you want ChatGPT to follow an instruction, the instruction should not come in the middle of the prompt. The instruction should either come in the beginning or the end of our prompt. So either begin or end your prompt with the instruction. Especially if you have long prompts, information in the middle is often forgotten. So that's why it is not recommended to add instructions in the middle of a long prompt. LLMs like ChatGPT tend to focus on information either at the beginning of a prompt, this is called as primacy effect, or the end of a prompt, this is called as recency effect or recency effect. What is primacy effect? Primacy effect is that LLMs focus a lot on what is written at the beginning of the prompt. It gives more importance. What is recency effect? LLMs like ChatGPT also focus a lot on what is at the end of a prompt. That's why it's called recent or recency effect. So if you want the LLM to follow your instruction, it makes sense to add the instruction either at the beginning or at the end. It should not be somewhere in the middle of the prompt itself. So keep these three techniques in mind. The first is specificity, the second is hallucination, and the third is maintaining the order. What all we have covered until now comes under the category of basic prompt engineering. We looked at instruction prompting, we looked at three techniques: specificity, reducing hallucination, and maintaining order. And we also saw that instead of just looking at a prompt as typing something and or giving an instruction, you can think of prompt as a bigger as a puzzle, and have I assembled multiple pieces of the puzzle to give a more accurate prompt, to give a more specific prompt, to give a prompt which has order, which is at the beginning. Maybe the instruction is at the beginning or the instruction is at the end. Always think about all of these things. Now once we have covered the section of basic prompt engineering, now we are ready to move to the next section, and that is the section on advanced prompt engineering. When we start looking at advanced prompt engineering, things suddenly get a bit more interesting, and there are also a bit more rules and things to follow in advanced prompt engineering. Okay, so first I'm going to show you the components, the seven components of an advanced prompt. The first component of that is called as persona. The second component is instruction. The third is context. The fourth, the fourth is format. The fifth is audience. The sixth is tone, and the seventh is data. I'll explain to you what all of these seven components are, but a well-written prompt needs to have all of these seven components. Now, what's these seven components? First is a persona. It If you describe what role the LLM should take on, it answers the questions more effectively. For example, if you are asking a question about astrophysics, you can use this sentence in the prompt, that you can tell the LLM that you are an expert in astrophysics and answer as if you are an expert in astrophysics. That's persona. The second step or the second component is instruction. This is the task itself, such as summarize the text or generate this code for me, etc. And here we have already seen try to be as specific as possible. The third is the context. So the context is additional information describing the context of the problem. For example, if you want the LLM to generate an answer in astrophysics, but you want it to be short, you want it to be concise, that is context. So you can also say that the answer which I'm looking for will be read by busy researchers who don't have too much time. So that's why I want you to condense all of the information in as short amount as possible and maybe use bullet points. Fourth is the format. So the format specifies what is the format of the output you want, whether you want a bullet pointed output, whether you want three paragraphs, whether you want one single paragraph. It's very important to specify the format also. Fifth is the audience. Uh, Fifth is the audience of your target of your generated text. So, for example, if the audience is going to be students, or if the audience are working professionals, or if the audience are professors in astrophysics, the answer should be different, right? Because if the audience is students, you might want to keep the tone student friendly and a bit introductory. But if the audience is professionals or professors in astrophysics, you might directly want to keep it research heavy. So that's why audience is very important. It's often very common for people to ask ChatGPT to explain something to them in an easy manner. So this is called ELI5, which is explain it to me like I'm 5 year old, or explain it like I'm five. ELI5. That's why it's called ELI5. The tone. This is also very important. Let's say if you're writing an email, you have to mention what is the tone the LLM should use in the generated text. For example, if you're writing a formal email to your boss, or if you're writing an email to a professional colleague, you might want to use a professional tone, right? But if you are writing an email to a friend, let's say, you might use an informal tone of voice, or you might use a friendly tone of voice. You need to mention all of this to ChatGPT in the prompt itself. And finally, the last point is the data related to the task itself. If you want ChatGPT to complete a code, that's the instruction. But the data related to the task is the code, is the partial code which you will give to ChatGPT, and you will ask it to complete this code. So keep these 7 points in mind. Persona. So imagine you are a person who is writing about or who wants an answer on astrophysics. You need to tell ChatGPT that you are an expert in astrophysics. Second is instruction. Generate, I'm giving a lecture on astrophysics. Generate a seminar talk for me. Third is the context. Tell some context. The reason I'm asked to give this talk is because someone from this institute invited me and they expect me to give a 1 hour lecture. Fourth is format. Mention that I want my seminar to be in 4 paragraphs or 5 paragraphs. Audience. The seminar will have professors. So I want the output which you generate to be research heavy, so that professors will be inspired or they like what I'm saying. Sixth is the tone. I want the tone to be professional yet friendly. And seventh is the data. Maybe give some earlier talks which you have appreciated and tell ChatGPT to maybe follow some of these examples. So these are the 7 steps or the 7 key components of an advanced prompt. Now what we are going to do is that we are going to see a very small example. First, let me show you the example here itself, and then we are going to go to the Google Colab interface to see the example. All right. So here is an example of a 7 component detailed prompt. So imagine that, so the task or the instruction is summarize key findings of the paper. A person who has not studied prompt engineering will maybe just give the paper abstract and ask ChatGPT to summarize the key findings of a paper. But that's not how you should interact with ChatGPT. Instead, consider these 7 components. First, ask ChatGPT that you are the expert in large language models. You excel at breaking down complex papers into digestible summaries. Second, summarize the key findings of the paper or the abstract which I have attached. Your summary should extract the most crucial points that can help researchers quickly understand the most vital information of the paper. That is the context, which is additional information. Then format. I want the format to be bullet pointed summary, followed with a concise paragraph that encapsulates the main result. Then, after this comes the audience. The summary is designed for busy researchers that quickly need to grasp the newest trends in large language models. Tone. The tone should be professional and clear. And the data, here is where you have to add the abstract of the research paper which you want the summary for. You see how much specific and how much detailed this 7 component procedure is. Once you spend this much effort in generating the prompt itself, the output will be that much better. And now I want to illustrate this to you in code. So now what we are doing is we are going to Google Colab interface, and this code is again borrowed from Hands-on Large Language Models GitHub repository by Jay Alamar. Before we get started, you will need to install some packages. So you can install LangChain, OpenAI, Transformers, sentence transformers, etc. I don't think we are going to need all of these packages right now in today's lecture, but still it's better to just install them in case those are needed right now or in subsequent lectures. Second, when we are demonstrating prompt engineering through code, we need some large language model, right? I'm not going to use ChatGPT here. I'm going to code it out here in Google Colab. The model which we are going to use is Microsoft Phi 3. It's a small model. So if you search about it, Microsoft / Phi 3, you will see that it has 3.8 billion parameters. Compared to that, GPT-3 has 175 billion. So GPT-4 might be even having a trillion parameters. Microsoft Phi 3 model is a small model. It has 3.8 billion parameters, but it works decently. So what we have done here is that we have downloaded the Transformers package from Hugging Face. This is important. So you have to install Transformers package from Hugging Face, and then from there we have installed or imported this package auto model for causal language models and auto tokenizer and the pipeline. So first we have to load the model and the tokenizer. So the model is, we are going to use the pre-trained Microsoft Phi 3 mini model, and we are going to load the pre-trained tokenizer itself. We are not going to use any custom tokenizer. And then we have to create a pipeline. So the pipeline is text generation. We are going to pass in the Microsoft Phi 3 model. We are going to pass in our tokenizer. And we are saying that the maximum new tokens which are generated is 500, which means that whenever we give any prompt, we should not exceed more than 500 tokens. Although one token is not strictly equal to one word, for the purposes of this lecture, you can assume that when I say one token, I mean one word. So now once you run this, you will see that the model is loaded, which means you can use this model, give it a prompt, and then generate the output. So that's much better than using ChatGPT, I feel, because ChatGPT we have no control over this. Here I can easily change to some different model here right now. I can change a tokenizer. I can add some things such as the temperature settings or the top case settings to change the variability of the output to make the output more creative, etc. That's why I'm showing this coding interface. No need to be scared because of this Google Colab coding interface. I'll be sharing the code file with you. Even if you run with the by clicking this arrow symbol, you should get the exact same results as what I'm demonstrating to you right now. All right. So once the model is loaded, I'll show you how we can interact with the model. We have to give a message, and then we have to pass the message through the pipe or the pipeline which we have, and then we have to just show the output. That's it. In the message itself, there is a specific format which needs to be followed. We have to assign a role as a user, and then so the role can be either a user, which means from our side, or the assistant, which is from the LLM side. I'll show that to you later. So for now, the role is user, which is me, and then the content which I'm giving to the language model is create a funny joke about chickens. And then here you can see the output is why did the chicken join the band? Because it had the drumsticks. So that's the output which has been created. So until now we have checked that we are able to pass in instructions, and then we are also able to generate the output. So what I want to do now is that when you pass in a prompt, we have to we can also do some things like apply chat template, which means that the prompt is converted into an internal template which is accessible to the model. So what I'm doing here is that I'm going to pass the message into this thing pipe.tokenizer.apply chat template, and here you can see that user has inputted this create a funny joke about chickens. That's it. And then what we are going to do is that it is the same thing what I showed earlier. We have to pass in the messages. So I'm just showing this prompt template to show you how the prompt is registered on the language model side. We can do several things over here, like we can change the temperature parameters, we can change the top T parameters. So here you see if the temperature is 1, the output is a bit more variable, the output is a bit more creative. I don't want to go into these details right now regarding the temperature and the top P or the top K sampling. I just wanted to show you how to load the model, how to apply the chat template, and how to print the output, because this will be needed as we use the 7-step procedure now. Now let's come to the 7-step procedure which we learned in advanced prompt engineering. So this is the text which I am considering. It's from a blog post by J. Alamar, and here are the 7 instructions or the 7 components of an advanced prompt. So persona, as I said, you are an expert in language models. Instruction is summarize the key findings of the paper provided. Context, your summary should extract the most crucial points that can help researchers. Data format is create a bullet pointed summary. Audience, the summary is designed for busy researchers. The tone is professional and clear. And the data is this text data which we have mentioned over here. And then you can run this, and the query is persona plus instruction plus context plus data format plus audience plus tone plus data. So there are the 7 steps over here. Okay, once the query is created, then what we have to do is that we have to give the prompt in this specific format. So here I am specifying a role here as a user, and the content from the user side is this query. Then what you can do is you can print out the chat template, how it is registered on the LLM side. You can see that the user has said all of these things to the LLM, and that's the prompt. Then what we can do is we can print out the output by passing the messages through our pipeline, and let's see the output. This is exactly what we wanted. We wanted the output in a bullet pointed format, which is not too long because it's for busy researchers who don't have too much time. The format is also followed, which is bullet pointed summary. The tone is professional and clear, so you can read the tone. The model consists of an encoding component and decoding component, each with multiple identical sublayers. The encoding component includes self-attention layers, etc. So you can see that the tone is professional here, and the tone is also clear. This is exactly the kind of response which we need. Now you will see that, let's say if I remove some things. So if I remove the format, let's say if I remove the format and if I run this, So what I've done here is that right now I've removed the format and I've run this piece of code again without the format being specified. All right, so this is run. So the query is generated right now, and now let me generate the prompt based on the modified query. So tokenizer is not defined. I guess I'll need to go back and run this part again so that the tokenizer is loaded. So let me run this right now. So this process might take a bit of time, as you can see here, because Microsoft Fire 3 I think takes about 4 to 5 GB of memory on local. So I'll just come back after this is installed. All right, so my tokenizer is loaded right now, as you can see over here. So now I'll run this code cell again. Okay, and now I'll generate the output. So here you see the change which I've done is that I have not added the format over here, and I want to see the effect which it has on the output generated. So again, here you can see that this does take some time to run because it's not as fast as ChatGPT. Okay, now you see here we don't have the output in a bullet pointed format anyway here. So it's very hard for me to read this. This is an example of how if you don't follow the 7 steps of the advanced prompt engineering which I just showed you, the output may not be the kind of format which you need. Let's try changing some more things over here. What we can do is that let me change the context, or let me delete the context here, and let me keep the data format, which means the formatting will still be in bullet pointed, but I've changed the context here. So I've changed the context earlier which says that we should extract the most crucial points. Okay, I should add a plus here. So earlier I had a context which says that we should only extract crucial points, but now that has been removed. Let's see the impact which it has on the output. I've put back the bullet pointed format again. So the output will still be in bullet pointed format, but let's see what happens if context is not there. Again, it will take probably 10-15 seconds for this to completely run. All right, so here you can see that bullet pointed format is there, but you see here the main results. This is huge, this is very long, and that is because the context has not been provided. The busy researchers are going to read this, right? So we don't want sentences which are this long. And earlier you see the context had written that the summary should extract the most crucial points that can help researchers quickly understand the most vital information. Since you did not write that, now this huge sentence is there which I don't need. So here you can see that adding and removing some elements from the 7 components of advanced prompt engineering which we just saw can completely change the output which you get. That's why one key takeaway from this lecture is always keep these 7 points in mind: persona, instruction, context, format, audience, tone, and data. One more thing which I want to mention is that you will never get the correct answer or the best answer in the first prompt itself. You have to experiment with various prompts. So maybe in the first iteration, you only try with instruction and data. In the second iteration, you add a persona. In the third iteration, you add the context and the tone also. So keep on sequentially changing prompts and keep on sequentially increasing the prompt complexity so that you can try these changes yourself. So that's why it's called prompt engineering. It's not something quick which you do and get the answer. There is an iterative approach which is also involved. So good prompt engineers are those who try out various things, try out several iterations, and usually they get to a format which works for them. Maybe this 7 prompt also sometimes will not, this 7 component approach might not sometimes work for you. Then you have to try new things. You have to be creative and try things like maybe an emotional stimuli. So adding small things like an emotional stimuli can lead to very different responses. So for example, if you add a prompt and say that this is very important, very, very important for my career, or I really, really care about this, the output which you get might be completely different. So you might need to get very creative at times, but just know that the prompt which you add really affects the output which you get from large language models and chat GPT. And I hope that I've conveyed this through today's lecture. So, in summary, I want to say that you can be as creative as you want when you do prompt engineering, but always keep in mind some patterns or some rules which have proven to improve the output from the prompts, such as the 7 component procedure we saw in advanced prompt engineering. In the next lectures, what we are going to learn is several different things such as in context learning. Then we are going to learn about chain prompting. We'll learn about chain of thought prompting, and then we'll learn about tree of thought prompting. All of this are a bit more advanced modules, but they are very, very useful if you want to do some very cool and useful things with large language models such as ChatGPT. So thank you so much everyone. I hope you learnt from this lecture and you liked the theory plus the coding component of this lecture. We'll follow a similar approach of hands-on theory plus coding in the next lecture also. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you in the next lecture.